Sumner Sambo. Next is Nigeria's crude oil sector and claims by regulator, the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, NUPRC, that crude oil losses from theft has dropped by 90% in the last 4 years. The Commission has in the meantime denied reports of 8.4 trillion naira crude oil theft, describing it as misleading, adding that the reports lack proper context as crude oil losses have been on the downward trend. It also faulted the report on the grounds that it relied on an exchange rate of 1,500 naira to a dollar from 2021 to 2025 to increase the figures and sensationalize actual losses, when in actual fact, Nigeria's exchange rate was less than 430 naira to a dollar on the official market and barely 600 naira to a dollar on average between 2021, when most of the crude theft occurred in mid-2023. It also faulted the methodology adopted by the report, insisting that Nigeria has continued to meet its OPEC quota due to the Commission's initiatives, which includes the project 1 million barrels and a technical capacity to produce above 2 million barrels daily. Now, the NUPRC has also been very active lately, approving a $510 million deal between Total Energies, Shell, and Ajib, and even withdrawing licenses from idle operators. I'm so glad to have joining me in the studio the Commission's Chief Executive Officer, Benga Komolafe. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and happy birthday, happy 62nd birthday. I mean, we've got the President Bola Tinubu wishing you well, and also a whole lot of Nigerians commending you having stayed as a pioneer person who is in charge of, regulating Nigeria's oil sector under the new PIA. So how has it been like? I mean,
thank you very much, Sambo. Thank you for having me. Well, to start with, of course, regulating the Nigerian upstream oil and gas sector hasn't been a tea party. It's been quite challenging, but then, of course, since the assumption of duty, we're very clear about what we needed to do, and we'll be doing just that, at least, right. And that has reflected in the mileages that we have achieved for the country. Yes, but I could see you raised a number of
a whole number of issues. Because severally, beginning with the oil theft issue. I mean, yes. You are saying that the figures have gone down, but some of the reports during the week actually said no. I mean, it hasn't really gone down so much. Talk to us about how we've got this oil reduction, captured based on the statements you issued during the week.
Yeah. Okay. First of all. Let me lay a background, and which is very important before going to issue of figures. I want to say that it is very critical that for all of us as citizens to recognize the fact that if the country is good for all of us, and that for us to build a great country, it is the duty of every citizen, to be committed to that. So it is not the job of, Mr. President alone, that it is the job of every citizen to build the kind of a nation that we all desire. I need to lay that background, and I'm saying that from the point of view that it does no good to any of us, to anyone, you understand, to try to demarcate, the country in terms of the kind of publications that we see. I'm going to take that equally in context. For instance, the publication, if you look at, that is the figure quoted, and the context in which it was quoted is capable of actually scaring investors.
Yeah, 8.41 trillion
is scaring.
A whole lot of Nigerians were surprised.
Of course, so it's very scary. So when we see that kind of publication, against the backdrop of the effort that is being made by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu since assumption of duty, honestly, you realize it's now complementary. So, but going to the issue strictly, like I'm trying to say that this administration, that is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, on assumption of duty, took the issue of crude oil theft frontally, gave marching orders to the General Security Services, and of course, the regulatory institutions to frontally address the issue of crude oil theft. And the truth of the matter is that that has really, paid off, and I'll speak to that. If you look at from 2021, because the publication tried to aggregate, that is the crude oil losses from 2021 year to 2025 was speaking, the figure was actually speaking to that. But it was an aggregation without attempting to decouple those figures in a manner to speak to the figures, you understand, against the backdrop of the efforts that have been made by the General Security Services. Exactly, that look at it. So because, like, the greatest, statistician, I remember Benjamin Disraeli had said that statisticians are the worst liars because they make figures to speak what they wanted to speak. So that is the kind of thing you see in that publication. Okay, now, as of 2021, we got a situation that we were recording about 100,000 barrels a day losses. Looking at that, if you fiscalize that against the prevailing CBN exchange rate as at then and convert that to Naira, that translates, because as a regulator, we are the statutory organization that actually speaks to figures relating to production and losses. So we are the authoritative source. And of course, OPEC relies on our figures. So any other authority quoting figures of production, we'll be doing that from point of either referencing the commission or maybe hearsay. So as at 2021, like I've said, we monitored that the losses amounted to about 100,000 barrels per day, and that translates to roughly about 7 million dollar per day. Yeah. $7 million. So, and like I said, on assumption of duty, that President Tinubu gave that marching order that the situation was clearly unacceptable and that he wanted to see a drastic reduction, that menace must be curbed, that the huge leakage in Federation revenue arising from the menace of crude oil theft needed to be addressed. So progressively, from 2021 coming down to 2025, we have now progressed from a situation of a loss of $7 million a day sample to a situation where we are now witnessing roughly $700,000 a day. So if you look at 7 million to about $700,000 a day, so you're talking of drastic reduction of 90%. You understand, in terms of
your statement had said that, and from some of the figures that you had earlier put out, you said that in 2021 we had a loss of 37.6 million barrels. In 2020 was 20.9, 2022 it was 4.3 million barrels, and then way up until 2025, between January and July, we've had a loss of 2.04 million barrels. And now let's take a look at why this oil theft persists, because I was opportune to actually be taken into NNPC's situation room, where I saw how difficult it is to actually tackle these oil thieves. But you will also see that some community leaders are culpable in all of that. There was even a church where, crude oil pipeline was being funneled into and all of that. But people say that, you can't have barges coming into Nigeria to take crude oil and nothing seems to be done. I think there's an initiative you put in place to know when barges come into Nigeria and they take oil out. How far has that gone? Including the issues of appropriate metering. I know that the Federal Executive Council sometime last year approved for it to have a new metering system alongside a private investor. How are you putting all of those together to ensure that crude oil theft goes down further?
Thank you once again. As relates to trying to curb the menace, which is the essential issue, I'll say that a number of measures have been put in place in terms of both kinetic and non-kinetic measures. Like I said, against the express, that is, directive of Mr. President, the General Security Forces have been making every effort to try to curb the menace, and like the figures that we've read out, I've spoken to that in terms of research.
Yeah.
Then aside that, because the combination of both kinetic and non-kinetic measures that are being deployed to ensure that we actually, totally, curb the menace, aside from drastically reducing same. So on the part of, that is the non-kinetic measure, that is the effort that is being made by the regulator, that is the NUPRC, and that is the aspect I want to speak to, why the General Security Forces are making their own effort in terms of the kinetic approach. So now NUPRC, within the period of assumption, has come up with 2 regulations, and these 2 regulations are intentionally designed to complement the efforts of the General Security Forces in terms of curbing the menace of crude oil theft, and that is the upstream measurement regulation and the advanced cargo declaration regulation, and I'll speak to that. And these 2 regulations are novel, they are pioneer initiatives, you understand? Since our oil and gas, that is exploration, development, and exploration in the country. That is, of course, that we are very mature terrain. We've acquired near, 7 decades of oil exploration and production experience. Yeah. So, but it's instructive to say that, but within this period, we've never had what you call metering regulation and the effort to try to track every molecule of crude loaded from our terminals to the discharge port. So the Commission has intuitively put these 2 regulations in place, and the regulations are designed in a way to be implemented in 2 phases. So, and just like you have said, you understand, we have implemented the first phase, and that's what we were trying to speak to, as to relates to the Federal Executive approval in respect of the engineering metering audit. So the approval of this Federal Executive Council has to do with, okay, given the fact that for almost 7 decades of exploration and production in the country, of course, the approach that you have some lacked units in place, but then there is the need to actually, first of all, that is carry out engineering integrity audit of all these metering facilities.
Yeah, because it's the OICs that have been telling us.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
What quantity of oil they were taking.
Yes, very good. So we want to change that trajectory in a manner.
So the NUPRC can determine actually by itself.
Yes, in
the
fact,
quantity of
our
oil
objective is to ensure that we get that done on real-time basis. That is where we are going to, as against production reporting.
And digitizing the meters too?
That is where we are going, you understand. So, but the whole initiative is designed in phases, in 2 phases. So you have phase 1 and phase 2. So the first thing is that we lay the statutory, that is a foundation. That is because, it's an industry that whatever you do must be done on the basis of proper legislative, statutory framework. In that respect, the regulations were made pursuant to the provisions of the Petroleum Industry Act that mandates the Commission to ensure, accurate, that is monitor, accurate metering of our hydrocarbon molecules. So that section of the Petroleum Industry Act actually speaks to, transparency, that it is the statutory obligation of the Commission to ensure, that there is transparency in hydrocarbon accounting in Nigeria. So, and it's against that backdrop that we put the 2 regulations in place. So we've carried out the first phase for both, regulations. So the next phase, the first phase, is to look at, carry out integrity of the metering devices. That is the LAC unit available across all the flow lines, and that, with that, That exercise was conducted in almost 700 points, in the upstream. So it was a very comprehensive exercise. So we've already done that and be able to equally identify points that still need to be lacted. So it's a very comprehensive exercise. So now the issue on the advanced cargo declaration regulation. So our objective is to ensure, and that is very critical, that every molecule of crude that is loaded from our crude terminal, we can track it on real-time basis digitally to the discharge point.
So this you can see every tanker is coming to load and then taking it out way up onto the final point.
Yes, not just the tanker, but the hydrocarbon, that is the crude.
Crude itself.
Yes, for every barrel of crude that is loaded. So we want to track it. And that is the big issue here. So that at any point in time, if, for instance, a tanker loads, let's say, 100,000 barrels, or let's say 1 million barrels of crude, and he ends up discharging, let's say, 1.2 million barrels of crude. So we'll instantly be able to flag, because the system will be able to flag that the tanker is discharging above permitted volume. So which means automatically, you understand, there must have been an infraction. Infraction is flagged, and we can track and begin to follow up such a vessel. So we've never had that kind of initiative.
Yeah, a whole lot of Nigerians will be very happy with that.
So we are silently,
Saudi Arabia doing that.
Thank you very much. So this is a kinetic approach. In the first instance, that we disincentivize, it will be a disincentive to even crude oil theft. Because if you steal crude, of course, it's meant to end in a market. So what we're trying to say is that we'll follow the barrel, to the market. So that is the whole idea about the two, regulations. So these are, in effect, the non-kinetic approach by which the regulator is committedly trying to implement the presidential, directive to ensure that we work in collaboration with the General Securities Services to curb the menace of crude oil theft sample. So we are doing that.
All right, very interesting perspective there. I want you to talk about the African Regulatory Forum, how you're working with other countries to ensure that some of these measures, there's peer-to-peer review experience and all of that. I know there was a meeting that was held sometime last year about it. What's the update about all of that? Okay,
thank you. So the African Petroleum Regulators Forum, AFRIPEF, was actually championed by the NUPRC.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so incidentally, currently, the pioneer, chair of that forum. And the objective is actually to foster cross-border collaboration, with other African, producing
all producing countries,
yes.
We share best practices, actually.
Exactly, with the change in energy map. So we consider that very critical, for a number of reasons, which form the basis for initiating that important forum for collaboration. One, we recognize that fiscals differs, from one country to the other. So we recognize the fact that markets are fragmented and infrastructure, terminates at the border. So it is important, for Africa to present unified, varied voices globally in the global advocacy, hydrocarbon advocacy, that is better for Africa to do that in a manner that the hydrocarbon resources in Africa will be better optimized. So these are the objectives for which the forum was formed, and like you said, it will enable peer review, standardization of, that is regulations, benchmarking, like I said, to help to foster cross-border infrastructure development. For instance, it will be better for us as a nation, you know, in trying to optimize our gas reserves, de-risking our gas reserves, that we have cross-border, infrastructure like the West African pipeline. So you could have more of that. So that would be better for, optimization and the de-risking of both our crude and gas assets. So the initiative was actually designed to achieve that. As a matter of fact, we are the African Oil Week that has just ended a week
that just
ago.
ended recently.
Yeah, so where the charter for the forum was signed, and I think in attendance we had about 15 African countries.
Well, that's a big win.
Yes. It was really a big win, and we are expecting to continue to pilot the affairs of the forum at least. Yes.
Okay, very interesting submission. Well, as we try to wrap up this conversation, I don't know if you are aware of the current threat by Nupeng and Pengasan to actually, halt crude gas and vessel supply to Dangote refinery in the midst of the troubling issues we have in the downstream petroleum sector. Is NUPRC worried by chance as to what this may mean for not just Nigeria, but a large refinery like Dangote Petroleum, and then of course its effect on some of the contracts the refinery may have already signed with others? What exactly can maybe NUPRC advise the federal government to do within this instance of labor disputes?
Well, regardless of the fact that the issues involve purely mid and downstream affairs, but our take is that parties should just refrain from what could cause supply disruption in the country, because that will not disruption in energy supply will not be in the interest of the country. So we believe that the issues involved are issues that parties can actually sit down and discuss and reach amicable solution. In respect of, we've always been having disagreement among stakeholders in the industry, and they've always, parties have always sat down to look at such issues without trying to put energy supply domestically in jeopardy, which will not be in the interest of any party. So that's our take, yes.
Okay, and then let's talk about the issues of the oil blocks you recently revoked and all of that. Some of those who were affected are actually local, businessmen and all of that. Some are complaining of, lack of, ability to be able to attract enough funding and all of that. Do you think that you gave them enough time? And then, of course, isn't there a better way of, helping our local businessmen to be able to, operate within this upstream sector?
Well, the NUPRC as a regulator operates within set rules. Within, that is the regulation. We don't just, revoke asset, without following the due process. So I need to lay that clear. And well, specifically, when you talk about the Revoke oil block, the activities of the NUPRC, I need to say, is guided by proper legislative framework driven by the Petroleum Industry Act, and of course, the regulations pursuant to. So we are guided by that, and of course, the stakeholders, the licensee or the leases are well, informed about, the provisions of the Petroleum Industry Act and the regulations. So, if there is any specific issue of revocation, it has to follow, the due process. In fact, as a matter of fact, I need to add that you need to see at the last African Oil Week, Nigeria was well celebrated on the basis of the enabling environment. In fact, a number of the panelists, you understand, actually committed Nigeria, that is our framework, our model to other African nations to copy.
All right.
Right now in Nigeria, that the right investment climate has been enthroned, under President Bola Ahmed
Tinubu.
Yeah, so
right.
we have been celebrated even, internationally, in terms of keeping to the rules, in terms of the transparency in which we are piloting the industry.
Yeah, very quickly, I won't allow you to go without asking why the NUPRC cancelled that deal between Chapal Energies and Total. $860 million deal. What exactly led to that decision?
Okay, thank you very much again, Sambu. On that specific, the specific issue you have raised, it was just a case of non-compliance, on the part of Chapal Energy. Like you said, I need to mention that the assignment passed through due diligence, and for every assignment like an offer, it's just like an offer, there are terms of every offer or award. And for sanity, if you do not meet the terms of the offer automatically collapses.
All right.
Like a bird without wing. So that was what happened.
All right.
Yes,
regulatory oversight here. And of course, we'll want to continue to commend you for all you do on behalf of the Nigerian people. The most important thing you have said here is that oil theft is on the downward trend.
Absolutely.
And we just hope it continues. And of course, a whole lot of Nigerians are actually commending the Tinubu administration on the issues of oil theft, because we've seen that going down actually, yes, and then the pipeline surveillance contracts and a whole lot of things. I think the APC-led administration has actually done very well in that instance, and we haven't had explosions of pipelines in the Niger Delta and all of that. Yes. But we must thank you so much, Engineer Gbenga Komolafe. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the NUPRC, and it's glad having you join us. Taking some time off your birthday, your 62nd birthday, to join us. I was there when you were confirmed as the NUPRC CEO in the National Assembly that day, and it's good to see that you're doing well. We must thank you so much.
Thank you.